Welcome everyone to another episode of Heart Inspired. I'm really excited about today's guest. She is a millennial who has written two Amazon bestseller books. Let me just make sure I got these titles right. The 5-Day Job Search and 1,001 Ways to Save Money. So, Annie Margarita Yang, is that correct? I want to make sure I've pronounced it correctly.
Yes.
Welcome. She is a game changer for millennials who are tired of running on never-ending financial treadmill. I think that should go for everybody who's tired of running on a financial treadmill, but we'll get into that a little bit more. She is a money guru, savings with over 1 million YouTube viewers. So that's pretty impressive in keeping a job in the market of financial, as well as writing these two books. She gets it. The delayed dreams, the struggles, and the ultimate work-life balance, which we all talk about on an everyday basis this way. Annie doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk as well. In today's conversation, she is going to share some of her insights from her book and will help you guide you with your job search and financial freedom. So, Annie, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to hear more about your financial freedom tips and tricks, as well as let's get into some of the books. So before we do that, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us about this YouTube viewership that you have going on, and keeping with a job and writing books. You're all over the place.
Yeah. So basically, I started my YouTube channel because I was watching financial videos on YouTube and I realized they were catered to middle class people who, they were telling people to stop buying Starbucks coffee every day. Don't buy candles, don't buy flowers to decorate your home. And then for several years, I was working minimum wage jobs and I was like, wait, I was making like $8 an hour. I've never bought a candle in my life. I've never bought flowers. So the advice didn't work for me. It didn't work. And
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if there's anyone else on YouTube helping low income people learn how to save their money. And I saw that there weren't. And since I knew how to do that, since I've done it myself, I started making videos. And then the first one was actually the one that went viral, how to save money on low income. And that's how a lot of the people discovered me. And since then, I've been making money management videos, but then I've recently had a shift. Now I'm helping people with their job search because so many people are getting laid off these days and they're struggling with getting a job offer.
Yeah, every day it's sad. I mean, we went through that obviously during 2020, and then 2021. 2022 was a little bit of a bounce back. People were landing jobs, and there are people, we don't want to say all doom and gloom. There are people landing jobs, but there seems to be every day there's another large company that's announcing large layoffs. So tell us a little bit about how how you came up with, first of all, the 5-Day Job Search, which I thought was a brilliant title. But tell us how that started. Where did that come from, that idea?
That came from the fact that I was able to land an accounting job in just 5 days. So I don't have an accounting degree. And I've been told by many people in the industry that I'm not qualified because I don't have a formal credential, and that they know for a fact, based on their experience in hiring and recruiting, that I'm not capable of making more than $55,000 a year. And that's simply like, at least based on my experience in working minimum wage, I was always the favorite employee out of all my bosses. Like, they would always beg me, please, please, please don't leave, right? Because I worked hard. I learned quick. I didn't need to have to be told how to do something more than once. And I just basically showed up on time. Showing up is actually 80% of success, right?
Yeah.
And so I was basically always very hardworking, dependable, reliable, and my employers loved that. And I think regardless of how much you're paid and your title, all employers would love that quality in an employee, and
Yeah.
not just the degree behind their name, right?
Yeah.
And so I've told these recruiters, I don't think that's the most important thing. I think just the fact that I'm willing to learn and learn it quick and I don't need to be shown more than once, I think that is more important to the employer than my lack of credential. And they didn't believe me. And so I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do it anyway, just to show myself whether I can verify this. So in my first job search in accounting, I landed an offer in 7 days. Then in my second search, I landed it in 6 days. Then in my third, I got it in 5 days. So, um, at first I thought it was a stroke of luck. I was like, wow, God has really blessed me. But by the third one, I knew it was skill. I have something going on here. I know how to land a job, basically.
Yeah, you had some kind of secret sauce that was working for you. And so love that you're sharing it for others. When you got that first hire, and you said you were willing to learn quick, I think about some of the people I coach, and some people are very confident and they're willing to put themselves out there. What do you tell those who are a little bit more introverted, gun shy, maybe suffer a little bit more of imposter syndrome, even though they have the skills? What do you tell them?
I tell them that nobody knows what they're doing and everyone is faking it. That's what I've come to realize. I thought I'm 29 now. It was my birthday last week. I
Happy
all
birthday.
throughout my thank you. All throughout my 20s, I thought I would just magically wake up one day and I would feel competent and like I'm an expert and that people would respect me, or like maybe one day when I'm in my 30s or 40s, then I would be really successful. And then I looked around and I realized, wait a minute, nobody knows what they're doing. Especially during the pandemic, we had so-called experts get on the media in public spouting non-factual things with confidence. And it was at that point I broke. I was like, what? Why do they have the right to get up and speak and I don't? I'm someone who actually does know what I'm doing. I think I deserve recognition. And so I think people who are a bit more introverted and shy and who have imposter syndrome, they need to learn to step up.
Yeah,
Step right? That's
yeah.
basically why I make my YouTube videos today. I actually say in every video, I know you're competent. I know you know what you're doing. My job is just to make you feel more confident that you do.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So let's get into the book a little bit because first of all, I like the way it was written. It really outlines things very clear. It gives people good reference points. And then I also checked out your website where you have some workbooks that help people as well. I'm going to page 19 where just the fact that you have, every book has an index in the beginning, so you know where to go, oh, what chapter, and people can zoom in. This is one of those books that you could read front to back, but then go back and kind of look to see where you need to hone in. So on page 19, you have, chapters 15, 16, and a few others. But the one that really I want you to talk about was, the brand. Okay. We present ourselves on social media before somebody even looks at your resume to decide to call for an interview. Your brand is so important. And you have on chapter 16, creating a lasting first impression with a professional headshot. Tell the audience how important it is for your brand and your headshot on any social media that you have yourself out there.
Oh my gosh. Your headshot is basically you saying hello to the world. You meet someone new in person, you say hello, you smile, you shake your hand, and you make eye contact, right? It's the same thing. I don't understand why you see on social media people have headshots where they're looking away from the camera. Like,
Yeah.
are you cool?
Yeah.
Trying to look cool? Too
Too
cool
cool
to
for
talk to
school.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're also not consistent. They're not consistent. They have on Facebook maybe a picture that's 5 years old. Their LinkedIn 2 years old. TikTok maybe 3 years old. Who knows? Like a random picture of different points in their life on each social media. And the problem with that is I like to think of the internet as this gigantic public town hall where everyone
Very
gets to
cool.
speak
Yeah.
their opinion. And
Yes.
back then when we used to have real town halls and then we used to go meet people, people would be able to recognize you because they see you from the front, the back, all angles, right? And if they saw you consistently enough, they know your face, and then yeah, 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 I recognize her, and then they know your name, right? But if you use a different picture for each one, how's anyone gonna recognize you?
Exactly. Exactly. Um, you also mentioned about the your full name. This is another pet peeve of mine where people have these catchy names, these catchy titles, and everything else like that. Um, What's your thought as a millennial about the borderline, the fine line of being professional and being a little catchy?
What do you mean by catchy name? I haven't seen those.
Sometimes they have like these cool titles, like I'm a coach whisperer. I'm just making something up. The titles that go underneath your name of who you are.
Oh, yeah, those, they're not really helpful. Even like, you know what I hate, even though all CEOs do this? They just put CEO/founder. And that's someone who has like is more advanced in their career and need it, right? And even then they still put CEO slash founder. I'm like, CEO/founder, what do you do?
Right,
What?
right.
I don't understand, what do you do? And even if you put like author, right? That's something I was thinking of, like author. But then I was even questioning myself as this brand. Like if someone just came upon me, um, author of what? What do you do? I don't understand. Right?
Yeah. Well, a book
So
author, it's pretty clear, but I get what you're saying is that you got to give yourself a little bit more content and credibility so it's catching to the audience.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I came across someone who said he's like um human engineer. I was like, what does that even mean?
Sounds like a doctor.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. So I just really encourage people, please just use the conventional ways.
Yeah,
And be very clear
exactly.
cut. And if you're CEO at slash founder, like just be clear cut what you do, right? Not
Yes.
the title, the position. Like for
Yeah.
me, instead of author, I just put author of the 5-day job search. So it's very
Yeah.
clear I am an author who helps people with their job search, right?
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
might have put career coach. That would have sufficed as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So you are in an accounting world as well as doing this book with tips on career coaching. Um, what do you find joy on? What do you find joy with the most? Is it all three? Is it one more than the other? Is it a blend?
I can't say I need everything in my life. Otherwise, I get really bored. If I had to stick with the 9 to 5 for the rest of my life and do the same job until I was 65 to retire, I think I would die before I reach 65 because
Yeah.
of boredom.
Well, the good thing is that nowadays, we're definitely of a different generation. Um, boomers or even before baby boomers, you got a job and you stayed in it for 40 years and then you retire and then, you either live or go to the other path. Now, even probably 20 years ago, people had jobs 3, 5 years and move on. I think that corporate has a lot to do with why people shift jobs so frequently. It's that there's a larger yearning for joy and stimulation. So, what do you look for when you're working in one field or the other? And what's your span of where okay, now you're bored? Do you start to create things for yourself? What does that look like? What's your time frame?
Mm. I don't have a time frame. I think it just hits a point when I stopped learning something.
Oh,
Like I still have a quote unquote full-time job where I work only 10 to 15 hours a week. I still get the same pay, so I say quote unquote full-time, and according to my W2 I'm a full-time employee. But officially I that's official, but like the real thing is I actually work part-time hours there. I started hitting the boredom point I think 2 years in when
okay.
I stopped learning new things. Like I even 1 year in, I had to be a bit more deliberate in my learning. It wasn't just like um the learn as you go and once you hit the learning curve, that's it. I had to like once I've learned what other people taught me at the company and they couldn't show me more things, I had to like go in the software. We were using Appfolio for property management. So I was like, okay, well, we're using this software Appfolio, let me see what I can learn about this software. So I started watching every video, read every article, attended every webinar that the software was offering. And it took maybe like 6 months to go through all of that documentation.
Yeah.
And then even after that, I had to implement the things that I learned. I showed my boss, I was like, hey, they're recommending we use this AI function. You want to try it out? And he said, sure. So I would implement, but that was like just another year. Right. And then at that point, I couldn't find anything else more to really learn or automate. So at that point, that's when I started looking at other things to do outside of work that I could do, like maybe the side hustle kind of stuff. Yeah.
You brought up a very good point. Something that I coach on is that people are sometimes miserable in their job. You know, it's either a toxic work environment, it's not stimulating, there's no growth opportunity. And if you look at the job as just the means financially to do all the other things you like to do in your life, then make room to do all those other things. And then your job is your joy job because it's the financial hook for you to be able to do some of that other stuff that is so important to you. I think learning is I used to do that. Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. I was in a job and I told my boss, I'm bored and I need to find other things. He's like, oh, you're bored. And the next thing you know, the floodgates open up. But I like a good challenge. And I think that it's important for people, especially young, when you have so much that you can learn, put yourself out there to stretch a little bit and to learn. What was the response of your boss when you were learning all these things and bringing them to the table?
He said, "Wow, these ideas are dynamite." But so actually I told him because I was getting bullied at work actually. My
Oh,
yeah, the whole time I was there, I was getting bullied. My coworkers were very passive aggressive, and then when I would be in the office, I would say hi. They would literally roll their eyes at me when I greeted them good morning. So it was not the nicest place to be, but I loved my boss. He was very nice. My coworkers weren't, but the man who wrote my paycheck was nice. So that was the
yeah. Well,
important
that's
thing.
the most important
Yeah.
person that you have to have a relationship with.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that was the most important thing. So I didn't really care what my coworkers were doing or saying, but we're still social beings, so it was still affecting me emotionally.
Yeah.
And I'm empathic, so I can pick up on other people's feelings, right? I'm very sensitive to energy. So at some point I got sick. I got an illness from it. So I had to be out of the office. But before that, I told my boss, I was like, we either need to fix the culture here or I have to leave because I'm physically ill from the culture. And he said, okay, great. Like, let me make you the operations manager. Like, let me promote you to doing that. And then we can fix the operations and make the operations run more efficiently beyond you just doing accounting. And I was really excited. And within 4 days, I came back to him with a list of 25 ideas on how we could run the operation for his entire company much more efficiently and save money, save labor, save time, all of that. And he said, these are great. Let me take a look over this weekend. I'll get back to you next week. And then the next week came. I was like, what did you think? I didn't have time to look over it. And then I was like, do you want me to come back to you next week? He's like, sure. And he repeated this 4 times. And then at some point I realized he liked it, but I don't think he actually wanted to implement.
Yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah.
was kind of just giving you lip service at that point.
Yeah, so it's at that point
Yeah.
when so while the reaction was good, there was no action taken, and actions speak louder than words. So it was at that point I realized, I mean, it's his company, not mine. So I'm gonna focus on growing my own company instead.
Such a smart thing to do. Um, You talk about that a little bit about your branding with, website and email and things like that. How does somebody who has just employee mindset relate to that?
Well, I like to tell people even if you're an employee, you still work for yourself. You always work for yourself. You are the CFO of your own household. You are
That's
also the
right.
CEO of your own household. Basically, what you're doing is this is called the job market. It's a marketplace. So actually, when you're an employee, you're selling your time, you're selling your labor, right? And your skill set to go with it. And so your one employer is your one client. I like to think of it like that. Um, and if that one client of yours is not happy, they will fire you, right? So for more stability, that's why business, even though people think business is more risky and scary, actually business is less risky and scary because you're diversifying your basket here. If you work for 10 hours for client A, 5 hours for client B, another 3 hours for client C, right? Pretty much every single one of those clients would have to fire you before you really lose all of your sources of income. So
That's a
every
very good
employee,
way to think about it.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Well, it
Every
is
employee is
riskier to
still,
be, yeah, there's
yeah,
there's the pluses and minuses in being an entrepreneur for sure. The financial freedom, but actually having more than one basket, because you could even fire someone who you're not happy working with as a client
yeah,
versus being waiting for the other shoe to drop every time you walk into an office.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Um, so for someone who has lower income, let's say, and is just starting out an entry level job, all excited, college graduate, what have you, how do they, because I saw that you had, you spent quite a bit of money on different projects to make sure that you had your brand. What do you tell somebody who's just starting out? How do they start out small to be able to build their brand?
Okay, the bare minimum in terms of like what they should spend their money on for the projects is I think they need to take their domain name. So that's only $12 a year. There's no reason not to do it. So you're Michelle Delgado, it should be michelledelgado.com, right? Take your
I
full
have
name.
that. Yep.
Exactly. I've had college students come up to me for help. Some of them had already taken a domain name, but I recommend them there's an issue with their domain name in that, for example, they might say johnsmithgraphics.com, right? They choose like an industry or related to what their work is for their domain name. And I tell these folks, I was like, most people don't stay in one career until they retire, right? So
Well, yeah, and it could
yeah,
change.
or even
Absolutely.
industry
Right,
as well. People
right.
switch, in their 30s, 40s when they discover something new about themselves and they want to change. So if you do that with your domain name and that's the thing you build up, then you'll have a hard time migrating later all that content to a new website, and you might even have to make a new email address to go with it. So I tell them just your name is fine, please, just your name.
Yeah, and
Um,
if you don't have, here's a tip, because I
yeah,
had to do this. My name, Michelle Delgado, is believe it or not, kind of popular. So I had to do Michelle Dash Delgado as opposed to Michelle dot Delgado. So, don't give up if you see that there's somebody else with the same name. There are ways to be creative about it. You can have it run all in together, but I think that's a great idea. Even if you don't have a website built, especially for those who are creative, that's where you can land your portfolio. And so that should be the link that's on your resume,
yeah,
on the first fold, no less.
that's right. And if you don't have a website, like some people don't want to pay $16 a month for Squarespace because they're just like, well, I'm not freelancing, I'm just an employee, and they don't want to spend that money. But people are willing to spend 20K on a college degree. I'm just saying.
I get
But they
it.
don't want to spend $16 on a website. Okay. Um,
You could spend $16 in one afternoon at Starbucks.
yeah, exactly. So I just question people's priorities when they say that. Um, but you can have it redirect to a different site for free. You can have your link
Absolutely.
redirect to your LinkedIn, or if it's your portfolio, you can redirect it to your Instagram. Either way, it doesn't have to be like a blank page.
Yeah, yeah. That's really great, great information. So let's go back to the financial part, because this is interesting to me that, your financial freedom and the loans and everything else, people who, got into college are still in college. There's nothing wrong with people who want to pursue degrees. What's your secret sauce, or what's the advice you can give about, the student loans and the financial treadmill that you talk about?
So, you know, I saw this TikTok video of someone who said I got a marketing degree and I have $80,000 in student loan debt, and an entry level marketing position pays about $45,000, and she said that she makes more money serving at a sushi restaurant. So that's why she works as a waitress at the sushi restaurant instead of getting that entry level marketing job
Yeah,
that pays 45K. And I think that's really short term, short sighted thinking.
yeah.
She even said that she thought she would come out of college making $100,000 a year in marketing with no experience, no
Well,
less.
that's a good pipe dream to have, but
Right. So what I have to say is you have to think about this long-term future that you have. If I were in her shoes, I would have taken that $45,000 a year marketing job. I would move back home with my parents to save money on rent, and I would still pay for food, or maybe I might pay my parents 300 a bucks in rent. Who knows, right? I would find a way to save money as much as possible and live on like maybe only 20K. It's possible. You know, it's very much possible to live on 20 to 25K and then use that leftover difference to pay off your student loan. 1 year from now, 2 years from now, it's time for a new job search, right? If you've done it right, you can brand yourself online. And by the time you're doing your new job search, you can get a $20,000 a year raise. It's very much possible.
Yeah, the jumping is definitely the way to land a greater financial return. It's unfortunate that when you're in a job and you are bringing your value to the company, you're learning, all your experience that you're getting, you're making money for them, and the reward is the cost of living raise or a small bump because good job, but not that big jump. So it's important to keep looking, would you say, is to interview a lot?
Yes, I think that's important. And I remember specifically at the job where I was working, I was making 45,000 a year, entry level accounting job. This recruiter called me. I wasn't looking, I wasn't interested. But he said something that stayed in my mind for a month. He said, "It doesn't hurt to know what kind of opportunities are available to you." And I said,
Absolutely.
but I'm not interested. He's like, it doesn't hurt to know, to see what is out there. You don't have to take them, but it never hurts to know.
Yeah. It's also good to practice the skills necessary to find a job. Because if you get complacent and you stay around for some place and you're not interviewing and you're not updating your resume and you're not networking, those skills kind of get a little rusty.
Mm.
So when you do go into that interview, you might be a little bit, off kilter or what have you. And it is good to know your value. So yeah, that's awesome. Um, there was something else in your book that I wanted to ask you about. You have some workbooks, some worksheets that help people define, what a career self-discovery worksheet. So you have lots of great little tips on your website. Were these things that you experienced yourself? How did you put those together for you?
I thought about the things that could be more interactive for people because
Yeah,
like if you just read a book but you don't take action, then you're not going to get anywhere. So
yeah,
I was basically brainstorming a list of worksheets that people might use, especially like the one that sticks out most to me was the personal core values thing. That was an actual exercise that I personally did when I was 20 years old that has still stuck with me today. So I thought that was so valuable. I think it needs to be in the book. That was in the chapter when I think an employer tried to get me to violate my own personal values, but because by then I had already known what my values were, I said goodbye. Here's my
yeah.
2 weeks notice. Yeah.
That's awesome. And have your values, your personal values, some of them core will always be there. Have you changed some of them, gained more?
No, actually, they've stayed the same,
Wow.
surprisingly.
Yeah, yeah. And who knows, that maybe that will be the way it will be for a very long time. Um, I loved the fact that you put all these things together, the 5-day job search. I know that sometimes, even for myself, when I read it, I was like, well, in this job market, it's really hard to find a job in 5 days because there's so many people, the competition and everything else. Before we wrap it up, I want to ask you, what is your take on networking? Because I mean, you have a YouTube, you're in, you have your financial business and you're writing books and things like that. But someone who doesn't have any of those things and just has, their years of experience in a particular job, what are your tips for those about networking?
you have to give before you take. So I
Mm,
met this guy at Suffolk University. I was giving a talk at Suffolk University, and he kept my number from the talk. And he called me, and he said he was networking for a whole year. He's been unemployed for a year, and someone said, "Oh, if I want to have an offer, right, a quick job search, I need to network." Well, he's been attending networking events for a year, once a week at least, he was telling me. And I was like, oh, well, um, I don't really know what the issue is for him. So I said, if you want, I can coach you, right? Because people I help, they are able to land offers. And he was like, "Well, I don't have the money for a coaching session." I was like, I'm willing to do it for free. Like, we can barter for something. You don't have to pay money." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just tell me what I need right now in this like free consult?" I was like, I mean, I can't really help you unless I have your resume. Hey, here's my resume. I'm gonna email it to you right now." He emailed it right then and there in the call, and then he's like, "Can you take a look? What's wrong with my resume?" And then I was like, I mean, okay, here's quickly what's wrong with your resume, but as much as I can tell you what's wrong, I have to teach you how to fish. I have to teach you how to fix it, not just tell you what's wrong. Um, and he was taking without giving, basically. This is not
yeah,
networking. He thinks in his mind, he thinks this is networking, but you have to give before you take, and I think
yeah,
people don't realize that. I think when they think of networking, they only think of like, oh, what can I get from this person? And when I've networked, you can see from my everything I do online, I give so much. I'm so generous,
yeah,
like I give information freely, and I connect other people with each other. Oh, you need help with this? Let me think. Is there anyone else I know who might know how to do this? Let me introduce you to that person. Even doing that, I would do that for other people. I will see how can I help. I have helped so many people for years for free. Um,
yeah.
never ever asking for anything in return, thinking that later on when I actually need it, that's when I will cash in.
Yeah, it's such a, for me, I do the same thing. I mean, on LinkedIn, somebody will say, "Oh, can you look at my resume?" Happy to look it over, follow up with them. Hey, how did the interview go? It's rewarding to see that somebody has um moved up the needle for themselves based on, a conversation you had with them, inspire somebody else. And like you say, it'll come back to you. I mean, gratitude is just such a great gift for yourself when you can feel gratitude and fill somebody else's cup with that. So I really love that, and that you're helping others. Um, Annie, is it Annie Margarita, or do we just call you Annie?
Well, because of the branding thing and being findable on Google, it's Annie Margarita Yang. But in real life, people just call me Annie.
Okay, great. Well, Annie, this has been a real pleasure having you on the show. Your information is very valuable. We're going to make sure it's in the show notes. We're going to make sure we share it with everybody. What is up for you? Last but not least, is there another book coming out? What's your next big project? Are your anything new on your YouTube channel that you're going to be talking about that's going to be exciting?
Well, since the new year started, I've been posting quite frequently, I think at least 3 times a week with job search advice. And then just last week, I started posting a video on TikTok because I'm making funny skits related to job search and, going to college and student loans. So just trying to hit that 18 to 22-year-old demographic on TikTok.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we put all of that in the show notes as well. Annie, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a great pleasure. I loved our conversation, and I hope that this information and your books will help those in that 18 to 22 and maybe even beyond land the job and land a career that is proven valuable for them.
Thank you for having me on, Michelle.